Hey guys, so I wanted to talk about a topic that I don't think has been covered on our channel in this way before, from this angle, and also doesn't get talked about enough. I think even when it comes to like just generally OCD content that's covered online. So I think a lot of the OCD advice that we usually tend to look for and we ask about is asking about how to react to things in the moment, right? You'll get the question on one-to-one calls or in comments that, hey, so when I get this thought, how do I react to it, and what do I say to that? How do I respond to my thoughts? How do I respond to a trigger? What do I do in the moment, right? And there's a certain there's a certain amount of important conversation around that as well, because like for example, when it comes to intrusive thoughts coming up and making you uncomfortable in the moment, there might not be something that you can particularly do to extinguish the presence of those thoughts and everything. The best thing that you can possibly do in the moment is try not to have any kind of like reaction or immediate solution to those thoughts, right? And letting yourself sit in that discomfort and accepting the presence of uncomfortable thoughts and images in your mind, and for that to then interfere with your whatever activity that you're doing. So if you're like, hey, I want to go on a date and I don't want intrusive thoughts and images to be bothering me during that, then that's also the fear that you need to break down as well, or the belief that I must have a really good date. I must have a date where intrusive thoughts and images do not bother me at all. That kind of like inner control that you're trying to have is then fueling that entire cycle. So but that's a separate conversation about how to react to things in the moment and what's important to do there and what's not. I've also done a video on that before as well, in case you want to have a look at that. If you search in the YouTube bar on our channel something like responding to intrusive thoughts, you're going to come across that video. But I think what I wanted to talk more about over here right now is long term reactions, because I think that people don't really think about how you react to something over a span of time, which can be months, which can even be years. I know for myself, certainly, I had certain things in my life where even after years had passed, I was still having a very bad reaction to them. Ongoingly, I was having a bad reaction to them. And this thing is classic with a real event OCD or false memory OCD, like it can be with any team, to be honest, but like especially with real event and false memory, this is most common. And it's also reflective of your lack of acceptance of how your life has turned out, or certain events that took place in your life. It like if I take a very generic kind of example, let's say there's you lost a job in a company that you really loved, but you lost your job maybe, I don't know, like 3 years ago or something. And despite having a new job, despite earning okay now and being in a good position, if you're still feeling really bitter about that, and it's whenever it comes up in conversation, it like it gets a really kind of like strong emotional response, and it's almost like, and I've seen so many people in my life like this, and I was like this, where even after years had passed, when I would talk about it or when I would see people talking about that event, I could see the emotion extremely fresh on on their face, almost as if it happened just last week. And there's a slight difference between, I mean, of course you can still feel badly towards something that happened in the past, but if you're like feeling very like fresh, raw, visceral kind of emotions still, it's usually coming from a place of not accepting your life, or maybe not even accepting a certain person that let's say made you lose that job or made the decision to fire you, which you might think was unfair, or you thought was not uh, based in fact or any sort of good evaluation. It was just, maybe it was a biased decision, let's say. So that lack of acceptance of that is what's fueling your constant anxiety and your bitterness and anger and frustration, whatever emotions are coming up. That's the thing that's fueling that. So outside of just fixating on your in the moment responses, I think it's also really important to look at your long term responses as well. Um, because if you don't look at your long term responses, then you don't push yourself to really like think of your life in a more from a more rational angle. your continued anger and frustration in that very raw form, even after months and years have gone by, is you reacting to it constantly in a bad way. Again, if I talk about like those instances from my life that were like pretty honestly really difficult and at the time felt really scarring, I think have even years later having a very strong like really bad response to it was because in the moment I felt like I was re-experiencing those things. It wasn't just like, oh, me reflecting on, I went through something difficult and this happened. It felt like while talking about it, it felt like I was re-experiencing it in the moment as I went along, as I was describing it again or describing my emotions and my experience. And that felt a little disturbing to me because I was like, why the hell am I not able to move forward from this even after so much time has gone by? Like, I should be able to not feel like this piercing kind of emotion with this. And it was 100% coming from a place of from a fear angle because I was afraid that I was going to be stuck in that specific event or that feeling of that event for the rest of my life, and I will never be able to overcome it or have some kind of emotional resolve about it or have any kind of closure about it. That was a big fear for me, by the way, not having closure and not having internal emotional resolve. Which is why I was constantly trying to analyze my emotions and I was trying to get away from uncomfortable emotions and trying to avoid them the best that I could. Which was then in turn fueling my physical compulsions as well and avoidance and everything. So I really had to think about how was I reacting to all those events in the present moment. I remember even like the words that I would use to describe those, my those specific things was, I was like, it's like going through that trauma all over again. I feel like I'm re-experiencing that trauma all over again. But it wasn't the event itself. I mean, as I later also realized as well, it wasn't really the event itself that was making me feel that way. Again, it was my perspective over it and my fear that I'm never going to overcome this thing and it's going to be this like the bane of my life and it's like basically going to be the chip on my shoulder that I'll have to carry as a burden for the rest of my life. Again, fear of being stuck with those emotions, fear of being stuck with guilt, fear of being stuck with depressing feelings or misery or any of those things. I just did not want that. I wanted my life to be of complete peace, nothing from the past ever bothering me ever again, no regrets, no uncomfortable memories or images or emotions from the past at all. And if you think about it, that's really like kind of like not possible because I mean, even like after working on recovery, I mean, there's still things in my life that I don't feel very comfortable about from the past, and that's okay. I don't feel chronically about them anymore. That's the main big difference. But for me to have certain, let's say, regrets or think about certain events and still feel like emotional discomfort thinking about them, I had to accept that I will have lingering discomfort about certain things in life. And like I've spoken about very openly about my sexual abuse incident, for instance, like I don't think I can talk about it and be like, oh, I feel no emotion at all and there's no discomfort attached to it. Of course, there's a lot that went around that time and around that incident. So there's going to be some like discomfort that comes up with it. But it's also about me accepting any kind of lingering discomfort that lies with it and therefore changing my long term reaction to certain specific events or feelings or emotions or thoughts. So think about things in a bit more of a long term way as well, not in an obsessive way of what if this, what if that. I'm not saying that, but like think about some of the things that are you continuing to have a bad reaction to things that happened maybe months or years ago? Are you continuing to have a bad reaction to the same thing even though time has passed? And if so, then that's perhaps indicative of your beliefs and your perspectives in the current moment and your lack of acceptance, perhaps. And maybe that's what you need to look at. So, hope I gave you some food for thought. And yeah, hope this helps. Take care. Bye.